Well, good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good. Well, welcome to another Community Issues Forum via Zoom, usually at Christ Church Cathedral, but for the last 8 months, we've been doing them via Zoom. And
Hey, Bill, I think you went on mute there by accident. Or maybe it's just me.
Not just you. I can hear you after.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think he's on mute.
Yeah, who turned Bill off?
All right, I guess I don't know.
oh, here we go. Sorry about that. The technology gets to us sometimes. Once again, I'm Bill Woods of the Community Issues Forum here at Christ Church Cathedral, and we're doing this via Zoom. We're thrilled to have so many of the mayoral candidates. I think we're having all 6 of the people that are on the May 4th primary ballot. As you all know, we've got a mayoral, we will have a new mayor this November, and the first stage is to get down to 2 candidates. And so on May 4th, we'll be having this mayoral primary, and we have 6 candidates running, 3 elected officials, council member, former Mayor David Mann. We've got Aftab Pureval, who's the Hamilton County Clerk of Courts, and former council member and state senator Cecil Thomas. But we have 3 newcomers who are also seeking this position, and we want to give them time. Because there are 6, we think we need to keep to around 6-minute presentations, and then we'll have some time for question and answers from our audience. Looking at Aftab, you were the first to join us today, so I'm going to let you lead off for the first 6.
Well, thanks, Bill. I appreciate that. And thank you to all of our participants here on the Zoom and who are watching live on Facebook. I really appreciate just how much our city and the citizens of our city dig into these policy issues, dig into these important debates so that we can fashion a future for Cincinnati that works for all of us. So I really applaud all of you, and I applaud all of my colleagues who are running. This is just the start of a lot of conversations, and I'm so glad you've given us this opportunity. But the format of these conversations, Bill, is just, a sad reminder of where we still are with this pandemic. And, that is a really big part of what has inspired me to run for mayor. For a year now, every single day since last March, gosh, I can't believe it's been a year, but my wife has gotten up and said goodbye to our 17-month-old son, Bodie, and she's gone to the front line. She's gone to the front lines of this pandemic. She's a doctor here at some local hospitals, and she treats COVID patients every day. And a lot of days she wins that battle with COVID, but too many days she loses that battle. And families are losing all across our region in health disparities and economic outcomes. For my family and for families across the city, it's been a really challenging and unfortunately a very historic year. Historic because of this pandemic, historic because of the corruption we've seen in City Hall with the 3 indictments on council, and historic because of the economic downturn caused by this pandemic. And I think we've got to be honest, and I think we all know this, our city is in a really tough spot right now. And I know that's not inspiring to hear, but I am optimistic about the future, because when the deck is stacked against us, that's exactly when Cincinnati rises. And right now, we need strong leadership in the mayor's office and City Hall to come out swinging after COVID and accomplish what I know that we can if we do it together. I'm running for mayor to lift up all of Cincinnati, whether you live on the east side or the west side, whether you're black, brown, or white. I'm running to rebuild our economy after COVID to make sure prosperity is shared in every corner of our city, to build an economy with better wages, paid family leave, and opportunities for people to start and grow small businesses, to continue to improve and reform our policing and invest in public safety so all of our neighborhoods are safe, and to create more affordable housing and improve our public transportation and basic services. I mean, we all agree that Cincinnati is special and that the future is bright, but the next decade is a critical point in our city's history. We have to capture the momentum that we've seen over the last 10 years, but we also have to be honest and say that the success that we've seen has not been felt in all 52 of our neighborhoods. If every person in Cincinnati matters, which I fundamentally believe they do, our measure of success can't just be about how the wealthiest of us are doing. So it's not enough to just grow. Growth is incredibly important. We've got to grow, but we also need to grow equitably. And let's be really, really frank. We will either take on the inequities in our justice, healthcare, housing, and economic systems, or we will fall short of what I know we can be. And to do just that, I've just released just this morning an exhaustive 20-page plan for not only our recovery, but also our equitable growth. It's time to stop just talking about equity and actually act on it. And my plan will help us win the next decade. Take a look for yourself at aftabformayor.com. Look, ultimately, some amazing candidates in the race. I believe I'm uniquely situated to lead us forward, given my track record of taking on corruption, reforming outdated bureaucratic systems, and improving basic services. I mean, I on my first day, I took on the Good Old Boys Network in the courthouse by cleaning out the nepotism and the patronage. I eliminated hiring practices based on who you know and made it about finding not only a representative staff, but the best and the brightest that our community has to offer. And I'm proud of what we've done because we put people first by helping bring a national bail disruptor to Cincinnati to fight to put an end to cash bail. We created an award-winning, a nationally recognized eviction help center, which has supported the most vulnerable among us during this pandemic. I raised the wages of all of my employees to a living wage, offered comprehensive paid family leave, a portion of my office organized under AFSCME, and we did it all while saving taxpayer dollars. Every single year of my administration, I've given money back to the general fund, saving millions and millions of dollars for taxpayers. I know that we can accomplish great things at City Hall too, and I want the next decade to be remembered as a time of incredible growth and investment here in Cincinnati. I want us to lift everybody up so that any child born here has the support they need to live a healthy and rewarding life. I believe I've got the experience, the track record, and the drive to help guide us through the next chapter, and I hope I'll earn your support. Hopefully that was about 5 minutes. Thanks, guys.
Let's go with one of our newcomers, Gabby Begstrup. Are you there, Gabby?
Yeah.
All right. So let's have you go second.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate setting this stage. It is about issues. There's going to be so much about name ID and all this, but it's really going to come down to how do we solve these big issues? I'm going to tell you a story that I think tells you so much about what Cincinnati can do and so much about what our city hall doesn't do. I was the board chair. I built the school called the Donald and Marion Spencer Center. It's a magnet school, public school in Walnut Hills. We built it from 0 to 350 kids. And it is a great example of what Cincinnati can do when it starts serving people, when it breaks down the barriers between us. It's a majority minority school. It's a 40% free and reduced lunch school. I was running my business at the time. My daughter moved to that school when it opened, and the principal asked me to serve on the board and then chair it. And we worked hard to make a school that worked for everyone. And it's a great example. But here's the problem. That school opened up in Walnut Hills without a single crosswalk. And I know crosswalks aren't the coolest thing, but livable, walkable cities are. And I fought with City Hall. I begged City Hall to get us a crosswalk. I worked with our community councils, which are so important to the vitality of our city. And the city ignored us. And then in 2019, 8 CPS kids got hit by cars walking to school. And then all of a sudden we had a crosswalk. I tell this story because it's an example of how broken City Hall is, how reactive. Kids should not have to die for our city to do the right thing. There's no one on this call, there's no one in the city who would disagree with me that every school should be safe and walkable. And our City Hall isn't there. It doesn't work with the schools, it doesn't work with the county, and it's because it's corrupt and broken. We all know about the corruption with the indictments, but there's a deeper corruption, which is one that keeps our city from really being proactive and working to grow our city. Because we have a bunch of career politicians who are more interested in their next election than they are in doing the right thing. It's why we have this school where the first year they had 2 active shooter drills because there were shootings in the neighborhood. And what are we doing about that? So I'm running because I have 3 young kids. I'll be the first directly elected mayor with kids in public schools. And I think that's really important because investing in our schools and investing in our neighborhood and investing in families is what's going to make the city work. I'm also running because it takes more than cute talking points. It takes smart policy to make the city work for everyone. Right now, we have policies, tax policies, development policies that are designed around doing the most for the rich and the least for the poor. And that's the exact opposite of what the government should do. We have tax policies that make it so that tearing down a home in Hyde Park and building a McMansion gives you more money than investing in your home in Bond Hill. And we can fix that. Right now, we have gentrification that's driving families out of neighborhoods. And with smart policy, you can freeze taxes for legacy homeowners so they can stay, so everyone can gain when our city grows. And that's what it's all about. I'm the only candidate who's created jobs. I'm the only candidate who's actually hired people and created livable wages with good benefit in this city. And that's what it's going to be all about. I'm the progressive candidate in the race, but I'm also the business candidate in the race. And I don't think those fight against each other. When we invest in people, we do well for our businesses. And when our businesses grow, they increase wages and do well for our people. So that's what we need in City Hall. We need a mayor who's going to lead us out of the culture of corruption into one of collaboration. The greatest power of a mayor is leadership. The greatest power of a mayor is convening people. We have great businesses in this city. We have Procter & Gamble, the largest consumer product company in the country, and yet we have 45% poverty. We have Kroger, the largest supermarket in the world, and yet we have food deserts. It's because we don't have a real set of policies to invest in the entire city. We have still neighborhoods that are suffering from the sins of our past, where we have red lines in entire neighborhoods. In Bond Hill, much like many neighborhoods, even Walnut Hills has this now, there are no grocery stores. We talk about affordable housing. I'm the only candidate that talks about actually funding it, not just patting ourselves on the back. But funding affordable housing isn't good enough if you don't make sure that there's good transportation, if you don't make sure there's access to good jobs, if you don't make sure that we've invested in kids so they can do well in the workplace, and so that we invest in people so that they can get good jobs. And we need public transportation in grocery stores everywhere. And that takes smart policy. I spent 3 years in the U.S. House working for Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. I wrote policies, I wrote $20 billion budgets, but I've also cut checks for my own small business. And that's the breadth of experience we need. We need new leadership in City Hall. We need smart leadership in City Hall. And I bring that as a business owner, as a scientist, as somebody who's actually enacted good policy. And that's why I hope you'll check out more at votegabi.com. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. It may be fitting to have a long-time city council member and former mayor David Mann take up the conversation here. David?
Bill, thank you very much. I appreciate being with you again and appreciate the chance to talk with my fellow candidates and those who are interested in what in many ways is a very important race. John Cranley's term is, he's term limited and it's time to select a replacement. I have had the privilege of serving this community for a long time, a member of city council, the mayor, a member of Congress, and before that public service, I spent 4 years in the United States Navy as an officer. My life has ended up being devoted to service and public service. And I think just now and perhaps am needed more than ever. In my years on council, I have chaired every committee of council and now chair the Budget and Finance Committee. I know from my work what's involved with a city of 6,000 employees, a budget of $1.5 billion, a city that has 17 departments providing important services to the people of this community. We're going to have the youngest, least experienced council in history because of term limits and indictments. And I think my experience, my leadership skills are important to providing a mentoring and guiding a brand new council. We've done a lot of good things the last 8 years. The indictments and that stuff has led to losing sight of that. We've had a successful attack on childhood poverty. There are still poor children in our community, but the Childhood Poverty Collaborative did a lot to begin to reduce the families that are mired in poverty. We have increased human services funding. I sponsored the legislation that requires that 1.5% of the general fund budget is devoted to what we call human services. And by that, we mean allocations to private charitable organizations that are meeting the needs of folks in our community. I was heavily involved in the Preschool Promise Initiative, which has begun to provide qualified opportunities for preschoolers to get ready to go to school. That's very important to successful schooling. We recently, in response to the indictments, I authored the legislation that created a blue ribbon reform panel that's taking a look at all aspects of the city's work, and particularly the way in which council members relate to developments, tax abatements, and all the rest. And we've asked that panel to come back to us by August 1st with recommendations. There may be some suggestions for amending the city charter, and August 1 allows that to be on the ballot in the fall. It's a good panel. We've asked them to take a look at developing a code of conduct for developers, for members of council, to look at whether all contributions from developers to members of council or candidates for council or candidates for mayor should be eliminated, and what other ways we can make sure that we return to the time when we were considered the best governed city in the country. That's what we were, that's what we should be, that's what we can be. I started my service at the time that Ted Barrier was the mayor. Bobby Stern was in the heart of her career. I served with stalwarts such as Guy Guckenberger and Peter Strauss, and I know what a council can be that is devoted to the people of the city, not to self-interest, not to aspirations. I can assure you, I have no plans to run for another office. I want to continue to serve the people of the city. Affordable housing is something that we've actually made some progress on despite some of the conversation. I authored the legislation to create the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I authored the legislation to impose a tax on Airbnbs with the revenues dedicated to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This is the first year that we've required that 25% of every dollar in TIF district funds be allocated, dedicated to affordable housing. There's a lot more that needs to be done. I think the charter amendment has lots of problems that we should perhaps talk about. I'm concerned that it is not the solution that it appears to be. Appreciate the chance to be here, and I hope we have some time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. I believe Rafael Prophet is here. Do you want to, one of our newcomer candidates, former firefighter? Where are you?
I'm here. Can you see me? I see everyone else.
And I may have butchered your name.
No, you did. Normally you're spot on for my first name. A little emphasis less on prophet. You said prophet, but that's acceptable as well. But no, thanks. Thanks for this forum, allowing the candidates to come and contrast what they see as what's needed in leadership for the future of our city. And so since I am my first public run I'd like to, first just to give an introduction about who I am. I'm a lifelong Cincinnatian. I was born here in Cincinnati, Avondale, formative years in the West End. And again, back in Avondale, where my wife and I, we built our home, educated Cincinnati Public Schools, educated UC, advanced degree at Xavier, served fire department for 32 years, retiring as a district chief. Also at the same time in the National Guard, the Army Reserves, culminating with a overseas combat zone tour of duty, support of Afghanistan and the Iraq wars. And so my life has been of service. Not a newcomer. I may be new to political service, but I am not a newcomer to public service. I spent my life dedicated to that, which was influenced by my parents, my father, a Baptist minister, and more so from my mother, who raised us. My parents were divorced when I was younger. My father always in our life. My mother raised us primarily as a waitress at a small business, Big Louie restaurant. They had a couple of locations, one in the West End. And that's where my life of service really was influenced through her, where she raised us primarily on tips because the hourly wage would not support her. And the reason why I'm running for mayor, it's the moment. You asked me when I retired about this time last year if I would be interested in running for mayor. I had not thought about that, but it was right at the midst of COVID. COVID hit, the social movement that emerged right after killings of Floyd and Taylor. We were at a crossroads in our country. And I think if we don't really look at that moment, what it really means, I think we're missing it. COVID experience, the social health disparities that have been plaguing specifically Black, but also Black and Brown, other underserved communities for decades with our leadership at all levels, not effectively addressing it. The social movement that occurred after these wrongful killings, and the social justice issues that continue to plague us. And I, as a public safety expert, I certainly understand how we can make those things better. But that's who I am. And I sought to run because of, as King said, the fierce urgency of now. I mean, it's going to take creative, more importantly, courageous, creative, and more desperately needed selfless leadership. City Hall can't be about a stepping stone to another political position. Can't be about learning how development works. So when you leave council, that becomes an opportunity for some sort of personal ambition. But it must be about how do we use private interests, and I fought for war for capitalism, democracy, but private interest versus the public good. And that's what political public service should be, is that we must be that buffer, that leverage between private interest and the public good. And so that's why I'm running. I'm happy to take any of the questions as a public servant. I'm not abreast to all the issues, but I tell you, I was a strategic planner at the highest level of military. So I know how to bring people together to get at those things. We did it in war. We did it on the fire department. I certainly can do it as the mayor of our beloved city. So thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Now let's go to our former council member and state senator, Cecil Thomas. Cecil, you still there?
Okay, good afternoon, Bill. And can you hear me? Am I good?
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you all for allowing me to come on. It's very important that we speak directly to the people, and I speak from the heart. Most important, why? The question is why? Why am I running? My biggest strength, obviously, I spent 27 years in law enforcement. I spent 5 years, as the head of the Human Relations Commission. I spent 8 years as a member of Cincinnati City Council, and I'm currently in my 7th year at the Ohio Senate. And when you look at all of those areas of experience, and you look at what are the tentacles that are needed to efficiently run a state government, a federal government, and a local government, what are the tentacles at a local level? You know, there are so many things that are critically important to people. And my strength, my greatest strength that I've carried with me throughout my term on city council, throughout my time at the State House, my strength has always been public safety. And we just had a shooting downtown on 5th and L. So my focus when I was on city council was the chair of law and public safety. And I wanted that position simply because we had just come out of the civil unrest. I was the head of the Human Relations Commission at the time. I led the city out of the civil unrest. I brought ministers in from all over the city, as well as the region, to come and help calm people and allow them to vent. In other words, I have the experience, first of all, to bring safety back to our city, because you can't do anything else if people don't feel safe. We can build all the affordable housing and everything else, but if there's shootings and all these other things taking place, people are not going to want to live in your city. So I stand out from all the others based on just that avenue of why I'm running for mayor. Obviously, we got to bring integrity back to the city. Everyone on this call know me, and they know that I do bring integrity. I've done it and appeared before Bill and many others on several occasions. Now, education. I am extremely concerned because crime, poverty, and education are all directly related. So John Crowley was right on point, trying to address the issue of poverty. When you got poverty, children can't learn, teachers can't teach. There's just too much going on. So I would clearly focus my efforts on bringing down the poverty level in our city. And the only way you're going to do that is you got to have resources. You got to have resources coming into your city. You can't stymie development. Bill, it looks like, are you hearing me, Bill? It looks like I'm breaking up.
No, we can still hear you. It's a little difficult.
I don't know why we're having that. But anyway, as I was saying, you got to have resources coming into your city. So you can't stymie development. You got to sell your city. You got to bring the best and the brightest to the table to make sure that we are continuing to grow our city, bringing jobs and things of that nature. Access to healthcare. We got to make sure our FQHCs in our neighborhoods, citizens have access to preventative maintenance, if you will. There are so many of our FQHCs in neighborhoods, and the people can walk to those healthcare centers, and they can build a relationship with the medical personnel there, so they will have an access, so they won't be getting heart diabetes and heart disease after the fact. We can catch it early, we can treat it. So those FQHCs in our cities are critically important. Transportation. We got to make sure that we get our people to and from work. There are an awful lot of people that don't have transportation, access to transportation, but thanks to the passing of the transportation sales tax levy, thanks to that, it's going to open the door for quite a few individuals to get to and from work. And so I'm running for all of those reasons, and there's many others, but most important, folks, is my strength, crime, reducing crime, as well as allowing the best and the brightest through a city manager who can manage the city. I'm going to get out of the way. Let the manager manage the city, and he brings his information back to me, and we talk about it, and then we let council, and we work with council to move forward. So thank you. I look forward to questions. I'm very happy to participate.
Thank you, Senator. Our last speaker, I believe, is with us, Herman Najoli. Herman, are you with us? Have we got if not, is he not with us? I guess he isn't. So I guess we're missing Mr. Najoli. So we can, with the 5 of you here, we've got plenty of people out there to ask questions. Who wants to open up with a question to with our 5?
I'll go first, Bill.
Okay, Justin.
Recently, the current mayor and the city manager and city solicitor have declared that the mayor is now an executive mayor and sideline city council, despite the fact that our city charter pretty clearly states that city council is the legislative body and city manager is supposed to run the city, and the mayor has a much smaller role than the current mayor seems to believe. Would you all care to weigh in on the city charter, the role of the mayor, and how you would address these issues?
Bill, can I jump in?
Sure.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate the question. It's a really timely question because, all of us have seen what happens when politicians ignore norms, ignore laws, and ignore constitutions. And I'm not just talking about Washington, D.C., although we've certainly seen the devastating results of that. I'm talking about right here in Cincinnati. We've got to get back to the fundamentals of this charter, particularly now as we're in this cloud of corruption. We've got to be skeptical of politicians getting directly involved in these development deals in particular, Justin. And we've got to, I believe, empower the professionals that work in City Hall who are tasked with doing this work and are paid by your tax dollars to do this work. We need a bright line between the politicians and the professionals. I just fundamentally disagree that business as usual in Cincinnati should be these backroom deals. We've got to put an end to that. And it's now more important than ever for the mayor to be providing the vision, providing the priorities, providing the values, and then inspiring council, the administration, our community, and our institutional leaders to get behind that vision and to achieve that vision. But I do not believe, Justin, that if I'm lucky enough to be mayor, that it'll be my role to be negotiating the specifics of these development deals. Absolutely not. We should be empowering those professionals. And Justin, we're going to disagree with those professionals, but when we do, that disagreement should be public. It should be transparent. It should be open to everyone. That's how I think we can get past this corruption. We can get back to respecting and lifting up our charter. And frankly, that kind of separation will also help with the perception of how corrupt City Hall appears to be, given the massive influence of money in the system. Thank you for the question.
Bill, can I jump in, Bill?
Sure.
Thank you. Obviously, the mayor's role, the charter language is ambiguous, which leaves it for interpretation. So the first thing, obviously, that needs to be done is a committee needs to be put forth to totally review the charter to make sure that the language is very clear as to what everybody's responsibilities, roles and responsibilities are. I do not agree that the mayor should be an executive mayor. Absolutely not. This is why you have a city manager. The role of the city manager, obviously, is to carry out, work with those developers and come up with the solutions that is in the best interest of the city, along with his team. I would appoint whomever the city manager is, I would expect him to go out and hire the best and the brightest. They may already be in the city services, they may not, but you want the best and the brightest to sit down with the developers and then allow for that decision to be made and bring that back, that I, as the mayor, will then review with the city manager and then with council. So I guess I don't want to carry this out. I think a couple minutes. Best thing to do is for us to make sure that our charter is clear, concise, and on roles and responsibilities. And if the mayor currently has stepped outside of that to become an executive mayor, then that could be problematic if the language clearly says that he cannot. But that review has to take place, and then we start from there.
So, Bill,
Yes.
I've had the privilege, I guess, of serving under three different systems, really, of selecting the mayor and assigning a power to the mayor. When I first was on council, the mayor was picked from the council by the council. Then we tried the top vote getter, and then we amended the charter again to provide for a separate election of the mayor and to assign additional powers to the mayor. So we can act like that final amendment did not take place, but it did. And the role of the mayor is different than it used to be. The role of the mayor, as the city solicitor and the city manager have reminded us in lengthy and I think quality legal and policy positions, the mayor is recognized as the head of the city. The city manager continues to be the CEO and the chief administrative officer. That's what the charter says. The mayor selects the vice mayor. The mayor selects the chairs of the committees of council. The mayor sets the agenda for council. And it all works if the three legs respect and understand and fulfill their roles each other: city manager, mayor, and city council. And there's all this talk about corruption. It only involves 3 members of council. It does not involve 6 members of council. It does not involve the mayor. So to say somehow the mayor is a problem, I think is very unfair. And to say that the other members of council are the problems, I think is very unfair. The fact is, Senator, it was just 4 years ago that we had a charter review committee. It worked for many, many months, and we took a look at the proposals. Some of them were implemented, some of them were not. And the council, as I said earlier, has adopted my legislation to appoint a blue ribbon reform panel that's going to look at opportunities to improve the separation between development and council members. That's what we've been talking about. AFTAB at City Hall is separating council from the negotiation process. But by the way, at the end of the day, council has to decide whether a particular project should or should not go forward and on what terms. And the mayor has a role. And so to act like the mayor simply as another member of council ignores all the changes that have been made to the charter.
So I appreciate this topic, and it's one that, you know, is just absolutely forefront for the people of Cincinnati. Here's the issue. You're hearing candidates and career politicians talking about nice words about what they might want to do or might want to change or what might apply to other people. But it starts with real leadership. What we need from a mayor is someone who takes personal responsibility, which is why I'm running the only clean campaign where I'm not taking any money from developers. It's not because I'm anti-development. It's that there should never again be an article written on the front page of the Inquirer about how many hundreds of thousands of dollars the mayor or a member of city council has taken from a developer who's getting millions of dollars from the city. And so I've asked my opponents before, and I'll ask them again, how many dollars have you taken from developers? How many tens of thousands of dollars have you taken from developers who have business in front of the city? And until you're ready to stop doing that, why should anyone believe that you're going to run a clean process? That's what it comes down to. Right now, the people of Cincinnati do not trust City Hall to do the right thing, and with good reason. It is a den of corruption, and it's three people so far. The FBI has made clear that they're not necessarily done with indictments. I certainly pray that they are, but we need new leadership that's focused on doing what's right for Cincinnati. The job of the mayor is to be a visionary who sets the vision for the city, sets the priorities for the city, and makes those clear, and then leads collaboratively with council. And that's something we do not have. We have a pugilistic council. We have a group that's constantly squabbling and fighting because all they care about is the next race they run for, instead of doing what's right for the city. And I'll tell you, as a small business owner, nobody wants to work with the city because they don't know where you're going to stand tomorrow, because you keep changing the rules. It's a hard place to do business, which means businesses don't grow, which means jobs don't grow, which means wages don't grow, which means we have systemic inequality and poverty. And until that changes, Cincinnati cannot improve, and we cannot grow equitably. So that's what this is really all about, is a mayor who leads, a mayor who's ethical, a mayor who says, I'm going to put the people first, not my own career.
So if I can, if I can weigh in on the discussion, I believe Justin's question was, is the mayor or the city manager the chief executive officer for the city of Cincinnati? Is that correct, Justin? Was that the question?
The question was about currently the mayor has declared, along with the city solicitor and the city manager, that now all of a sudden the mayor is the executive. That's not the way we've been doing it, even during his term and previous mayoral terms under this so-called strong mayor. So I don't know where this new legal fiction, where it started from, and why some people at City Hall seem to be on board with it. But it's something very new and very troubling.
So let me see if I can sort of get at that, right? And so, I've read the charter, and I read it several times, and it clearly states that the city manager is the CEO, and the mayor is the legislative leader that sets the agenda, and as Councilmember Mann says, makes these appointments to committees and commissions. And so, but I think that the larger question is that this corruption crisis that we are currently undergoing. And my experience, again, I had as well as 32 years in the military, retiring lieutenant colonel at the highest level, that when you have crises such like this, there has to be a review. There has to be a review to determine how this occurred. And I believe that inflection point was when we went to a stronger mayor. And so you have to really look at that. And I wrote an op-ed. No one really paid much attention to it. But and really, I just said that we really need to look at how did this charter change influence this. But I will tell you that when the military, we did an investigation on when you had these crises. And more often than not, it was a leadership issue and the culture of leadership. And I believe the problem that we seek now at council is a values issue. Again, it must be selfless leadership. It can't be about your next position or the opportunity for you to benefit. It has to be a selfless approach to solving our city's problems through selfless value to do a based decision to do what is right, just, and fair. And I believe that is the issue that we are going through right now, is that we have to have new leadership, the leadership that believes that it's about all of us. It's about the common good. And I think that if we want to get at this issue of corruption, you really have to do an examination of how does this stronger mayor system influence that.
All right. Next question.
There's a question in the chat room
Oh.
regarding the American Rescue Plan, 290 million. What are the top 3 priorities for using this money? From Peter McClendon.
I can jump in first, and obviously, top priorities. You got to have resources to address a lot of the other issues going on in your city. So you got to continue to grow your city through economic development. You got to have an infrastructure, investments, things of that nature. Roads and bridges need to be repaired. That's all part of economic development. That would be the first one of the top priorities. Obviously, poverty, which drives the whole issue of crime and all these other things. You got to take the bull by the horns and address the poverty issues, and that includes affordable housing into that. You got to make sure that you got people with a place to live. That's critical. And then the other area for me would be employment, making sure we got jobs for everybody. This whole issue of COVID, our business sector, a lot of the restaurants, those folks have lost their jobs. Part of these dollars will be to shore up those businesses that are still surviving and try to bring back those that we may have lost and put all those people back to work through the business sector to address this whole issue of jobs and employment. And the other piece of that would be there are a lot of folks who could benefit from the apprenticeship programs that are provided by the individuals in the AFL-CIO labor efforts and the building trades. All of those apprenticeship programs, we need to bring those back. I was just in a conversation yesterday where we had over 25,000 jobs are available for CDL license individuals that are licensed with a CDLA license. That, all of that. So my point is that we got to look at it from the standpoint of where we were post-COVID, where are we now? Our hotels in particular, they need to be shored up, and folks understand the big folks also suffered as a result of this. The hotels were empty, as well as the smaller restaurants and things of that nature, and everything in between. So that's what I would be doing, making sure that we do a top-down evaluation of where we are post-COVID. Don't just start throwing money everywhere. Let's make sure we come up with a clear, concise plan based on a clear evaluation of where we are, and then prioritize our needs and spending based on what COVID has done to the city. So that's my thoughts.
Other
Could
responses?
I weigh in here? The city manager yesterday made her initial recommendations for spending the $291 million. Obviously, this is a huge chunk of money. Our annual budget, the general fund, is $400 million. So we're talking about nearly 3/4 of the general fund budget. And the first thing we need to understand, and we don't yet, is what the requirements, limitations, restrictions are that the feds are going to impose. We do know that half the money comes now. It'll come to us in May, the other half a year from now. We know that we have 4 years to spend the money. We know that at heart, the intention is that we deal with our recovery as a community from the pandemic. And there are two pieces of that for sure, right? There's the private sector, some of the things that Senator Thomas has mentioned. There's the impact on the public sector. We've had a lot of workers that have worked very hard on the front lines at some cost to themselves. We need to build up our reserves. We need to make sure that the departments have suffered so much can be, to some extent, their resources replenished. But then I think we ought to think really big. $291 million. Is there an extraordinary economic development initiative that we can think of and fund that will bring us some real economic success, jobs on a faster track than otherwise would take place? I mean, $291 million, I mean, the world wouldn't end if we took 20 million, said to the Port Authority, go develop some sites, produce some jobs on a fast track. That's just an example. We're going to take this up in the Budget and Finance Committee for the first time on Monday. We'll hold public hearings. It has to be dovetailed with our budget, which has to be approved by the end of June. The council, and I said this at the council meeting yesterday, the Budget Committee has a lot of work to do to get it right.
Pete, thank you so much for.
The point
Go ahead,
here
Gabby.
is- Oh, all right.
Go ahead.
I'll let you go next next time after. How about that? Yeah, you know, the impact of the pandemic has been extreme, and I think no one's felt it more personally than families and small businesses. I've got 3 small kids, and they're in 3 different schools. My daughter at Hyde Park has been remote all year. My daughter at Kilgore has been back and forth, and they have a preschool, which is a completely different thing. And for families that have had kids at home, it's been a hard year. I've also, as the small business owner in the race, I've seen the impact of the pandemic on businesses. And small businesses are the backbone of our whole community. They employ half of the people. As much as we talk about the big employers, really small businesses, which were hit hardest, are the ones that employ half of the people in the city. And here's the really terrible thing. The pandemic hasn't been felt evenly. Black-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses were twice as likely to shutter in this pandemic. And when businesses leave a community, they take jobs out of that community. If we want to address the income inequality in the city, the best way we can do it is grow small businesses in the neighborhoods. That's what used to make Cincinnati strong. It's what we need to be focused on in this recovery. So when I think about how to spend this money, the first thing I think is, how do we come in, create something like a revolving small business loan, a fund that can not only fund companies that are reopening or expanding or coming back, or new small businesses in the neighborhoods today, but continue to work in the future. And that's what I really hope that we see from City Hall, is that they don't just spend all the money on pet projects, on whatever developers told them they wanted most, but actually think about long-term opportunities for the city. How do we make Cincinnati the city we want it to be? How do we make sure, if we have real infrastructure problems in this city, some of this money will go into fixing roads. When they do that, can we make sure that we have bike lanes? Can we make sure that we have rapid bus lanes? So every consideration of this $290 million needs to be an investment in the future of our city, and an investment in reconnecting neighborhoods and investing in those neighborhoods. That's how I think about it. So it's got to be jobs. We should be looking at how we get back to leading the city in police reform. You know, unfortunately, due to very, very bad circumstances, Cincinnati ended up doing something really great, which is creating a collaborative agreement and starting to work on police community relations. Let's put more money into that and actually get that working again. Let's start talking about how Cincinnati leads the country in affordable housing. You'll hear all my opponents talk about affordable housing. Not one of them will talk about actually spending money on it. Let's do that, but let's also have a plan to reconnect all those. And this money needs to be spent over the next 4 years, not the next 4 months. Some of that money will and should be open to a new democratically elected mayor and council.
Pete, thanks for the question. I've got a plan. Let me be very clear. Number one, economic recovery. Just published a 20-page plan for progressive values and ideas to recover our economy, particularly for our Black community. Number two, public safety and basic services. We've got to fully fund that collaborative agreement. And number three, affordable housing. We have got to spend dollars on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund from the general fund. But let me do a deep dive on the first aspect, economic recovery. It's been a very difficult year for all of us, but particularly for our Black community. We've got to stop being afraid to talk about race. Because in Cincinnati, if you're Black, you're more likely to get COVID. If you get it, you're more likely to die from it. Black-owned businesses are more likely to shutter and least likely to get loans from the government. And now that there's a vaccine, Black communities are least likely to have access to it. So I understand why our community is frustrated. I'm frustrated by these challenges. And if I'm lucky enough to be mayor, my primary priority will be an aggressive, progressive economic recovery from COVID, and helping create Black wealth will be critical to that success. My agenda for economic recovery will be centered around one word: ownership. Black ownership of businesses, Black ownership of homes, and Black ownership of neighborhoods. Economic downturns like what we saw in 2008 and 2020, they show us that the most vulnerable are those who haven't had the opportunity to build wealth. We can start to fix that inequality through Black ownership. So first, we've got to make it easier, not harder, to open up a small business. Right now, the logistics of getting that done are overwhelming and confusing. I've got experience on this. I've led the way in the clerk's office in leaning into technology and innovation to streamline processes and make them more accessible and efficient. And that's what we need in City Hall. Second, we've got to take these funds and increase the capacity of trusted institutions like the African American Chamber, the Urban League, and the Chamber's Minority Business Accelerator, who frankly are already doing the work of supporting Black businesses through creating more access to capital and providing support and mentorship to help the business take off. These organizations are successful, and we have to do more to support them. And finally, we have to continue to make diversity and inclusion in our city contracting a priority. This is an area where we've had some success. Recently, we've gone from 2% to 11%. That's fine. But when the city is 40% African American, we know we have a lot more to do. So by lowering the barriers of entry for small businesses to qualify for the bidding process, we can do better, and we have to do better. Check out more specifics on my plan at aftabformayor.com.
Before we move on, can I just say, Aftab, you mentioned the Affordable Housing Trust Fund right now, but your plan doesn't have a single mention of the trust fund.
Can I speak
you
on the
keep talking about the
subject?
Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but you don't put any
Can
money
I speak on the subject?
and that's what matters.
Gavi, I just said, Raphael, if I could just respond, I just said that I would prioritize using the $290 million to help fund the trust fund. I just said that. My
don't
my
mention
plan
your 20
my
your
plan
20-page
is
plan
Gavi,
doesn't mention
if I could finish.
Can I speak on this subject? Can I speak?
Raphael, let me just finish real quick since I've been asked a question. My plan is specifically for economic recovery. It talks about getting serious about tenants' rights, making sure we have more legal access for tenants who are facing eviction. Talks about the work I've already done to mitigate those evictions, particularly for Black mothers during a pandemic. And I have already committed to helping fund the trust fund through the $290 million. Those are specific ideas, specific plans. I'm the only candidate in the field with a specific 20-page comprehensive economic recovery plan that is based on progressive values. And I'm really proud of that.
Phil, it's your turn now.
Thank you. So let me, the question I believe was how would the 290 mil or 100 mil, I should say, 290 mil be spent on Cincinnati. And I believe that and Councilmember Mann is right. We have to find out what the requirements are. And they're not just going to give us the money and say, oh, go do what you will. Right. So, but I believe those broad categories were, basic services, police and firefighters, and then the small businesses, as someone else alluded to, and then the residents. So, but I believe in order to get at those things, it's going to require the proper structure. I would challenge and say we don't have a plan. We've had a plan since 2012, a comprehensive plan, and in all honesty has not been followed. And I believe why is because we have not had a professional city manager since the plan was developed. The last 3 city managers we've had, and I've been, I believe, over 7-8 years, have not been professional city managers. And so if we're going to, we're going to be awarded this $250 million, we must have the structure and how to ensure that it's going to be used effectively. And we must have a professional city manager, one who is certified, one has the credentials, one have the collaborative of foundation to be able to get at putting this money to good use. Now, I will say this, 50, and I believe Councilmember Lemon Kearney suggested 50 million be used for this affordable housing trust fund, or issue 3, in which I support. That is part of what this rescue plan is for residents, right? And so we can fund that, as opposed to what a lot of the naysayers and our leaders are using scare tactics to say that we're going to cut firefighters and police and other basic services. It doesn't require you to do that. I wish people would stop saying it. It doesn't say that. That's a choice. If you want to cut firefighters and police, you can always do that to pay for things, right? And I've committed I will not do that. But here's an opportunity. We can fund that, in which when it was set up, it never had a funding source. We can use, if we get that, if it allows us to, we can put 50 mil into that trust fund. And when the next administration, and as AFTAP says, is if I'm lucky, Raphael Prophet to be mayor, I'll hire or present before a council to confirm a professional city manager, and we'll figure out how to create funds for that affordable housing trust fund. So we have to have the structure in order to do it. And right now we don't. We have a city manager who used to be the solicitor that is managing our city. Folks, that's just not a recipe for success.
We're getting toward the end, so maybe have each of you do a 1-minute summary of what you'd like to leave with us thinking about. We'll start with Gavi Bergstrup.
Well, thank you. Thanks for taking the time. I think, getting into the actual issues is so important. Real policy is hard, and it requires real experience. I spent 3 years writing policy in the U.S. House. I've worked with stakeholders all over the country, big and small, business, nonprofits, And it takes that focus on collaboration and smart policy and thinking about how it affects everyone, not just who it makes money for. And that's what I'm running for mayor for, is because we need policy that actually thinks about neighborhoods first, that thinks about how we bring the least among us forward. And we need leadership that does that. If we want to restore trust in City Hall, we need a mayor who we can trust, a mayor who's running a clean campaign. We need a mayor who's really solved problems, a mayor who's brought tens of millions of dollars of investment to the city, who's brought federal investment to the city, who's created jobs. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take new job creation and investment in our city, and someone who can really convene everyone to start solving these problems. Thank you.
How about our state senator? Do you want to have a
Yeah.
minute?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. First of all, I want to say that the city is filled with an awful lot of talent. We've seen the growth that has taken place since I left city council. And I cannot begin to say, well, I'm going to come in and bring all these people in. I'm going to evaluate the folks that are there. The city manager that's currently there, she may not be credentialed, but I'm understanding she is pursuing that. She would have an opportunity to also participate in the effort to bring a new manager in. So the point of the matter is this: we got to have a vision. All I have is the vision. The vision then has to be implemented by those that I bring under my stead, meaning the city manager. And then I try to impart that vision into my city council, along with them imparting their thoughts into me. And then we move forward. The last thing we want to do is just come up with all these great ideas and then just start throwing dollars at those ideas. No, you want to take your time. You want to get the people involved, the citizens of the city of Cincinnati. You want them at the table when you're making these decisions. This is what I've learned at the State House, is to have interested parties meetings on all these issues of housing and anything else. Bring the people to the table and let them be a part of the solution. Don't just come up with these great ideas and start doing things. So I leave this with all of you. I've got the experience to bring down the crime, which is critical. I got the experience from the state to deal with all these other issues that you all are talking about. And you got to have a state, federal, and local partnership, along with the partnership of the community, to get all these things done. And this fighting over what we do is not going to get us there. Thank you all, and God bless everybody.
Councilmember Mann, you got a.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you for this opportunity, and I want to thank my colleagues that will be on the ballot with me on May 4th. It's a great group of people. I enjoy being with them. I'm sorry there are no females. Maybe another year that can happen. Basically, we have a great city. We need to keep moving post-pandemic. We need to return to the time when we were the best governed city in the country. At the same time, we need to eliminate a tale of two cities, black and white, with very different lives. That has got to change. That would be my priority. And my strongest argument is, on day one, I know where the lights are. I can turn them on, and I can run the city. We need that kind of experience. This is not the time to take a chance with someone who doesn't have the experience at City Hall, someone who has an interest in his own career rather than serving the people of Cincinnati. I'm not going anywhere. My devotion continues to be to the people of Cincinnati. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Raphael?
Yes, thanks. Again, thanks for your civic involvement, having this this forum. So again, folks, I did this time last year, I was not thinking of running for mayor. I just think the time calls for us to really refocus what civic and political civic service, or I should say public service, really means. I'm running not for any sort of ambition, but to serve again the city that I love. That I believe that I bring a skill set, being someone had that lived experience, understanding what, and we weren't poor. We were a working class family, but I certainly understood what it was to have good, affordable housing. But I also understood what it is to have the opportunity to become a firefighter. to become a soldier to serve. And so I believe that that's the type of leadership that the moment calls for. And that's why I'm doing this. My family, they understand the sacrifice, and they have agreed or have allowed me to serve. And so I'm just asking for your support as we lead our city to the next chapter, our great city. But in order to do that, we do. And I believe I agree with Council Member Mann. I just think that our view of getting there, we must return to good governance. Thank you.
See, I think our final have to have pure.
Thanks, Bill. And thank you all so much for joining. I love Cincinnati so much, and I love the people in it. Most importantly, that is why fundamentally I'm running, because it's a really challenging time right now in Cincinnati, particularly if you're Black, particularly if you're brown, particularly if you're poor. And I want to be a mayor of Cincinnati to lift up everyone, because for too long, not all of us have been prioritized. Not all 52 neighborhoods have been prioritized. City Hall has chosen winners and losers. We absolutely have to grow. We have to recover after COVID, grow our tax base, grow our skyline. But when we grow, we can also prioritize equity. We can also prioritize lifting up the four corners of the city, and not just some of us. We do that by funding our priorities in equity, by prioritizing public safety, by prioritizing affordable housing, by prioritizing basic services. And I think I'm uniquely situated to do that, given my track record of taking on corruption in the clerk's office, bringing progressive, dynamic change through justice reform, reforming the bail system, protecting people from evictions, but also treating my employees with dignity, living wage, comprehensive paid family leave, and a portion of my office organizing under AFSCME. I believe that's the way forward for Cincinnati, and I humbly ask for your support. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all. This has been, I think we're blessed with a group of candidates for mayor that I personally feel good about. So thank you for this good discussion. I think we got into a lot of important issues, and so we've got a month to go, though I guess early voting starts in what is it, April 8th or something like that? So
April 6th.
April 6th. So, okay. So the next time we'll be going to the polls. Come back and join us in 2 weeks on the 8th of April. And we're going to dive into housing. Christ Church Cathedral is very involved in the affordable housing issue. So we're planning to do a 2-part series on affordable housing. So come back in 2 weeks. And so I want to thank our 5 candidates, not our 6 today, but our 5 candidates for being with us and really enlightening us about who they are and what they would do in office. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having us.